Hi, so I've been wanting to make a vlog about St. Vicious's tweet a while ago about the effectiveness of coaches in League of Legends, and Nick's video about coaching, I thought, kind of precipitated the discussion, and I think it's great that we hear as many kind of ideas and stuff on this discussion as possible. So I thought now was a pretty good time to make this vlog for you all, because I feel like maybe there are some people who are agree with what Nick said in his video and kind of what St. Vicious is saying, but are frustrated with kind of what that means. So I want to talk about that. So essentially, I believe that they're both right about the lack of professional coaches in League of Legends. And I talked about this on First Blood, episode 16, which you can go ahead and take a look at if you want to look it up. I think it's on YouTube now. And part of the problem is that League of Legends kind of started backwards as a sport. We started with the professional scene, and now we're going down in divisions. And a lot of modern sports kind of started off with a popular movement of sport, and then that became globalized through mass media. And so the result was you have all these coaches that work their way up into the pro leagues. And when you look at League of Legends coaches, like, where do they come from? They essentially are coming right out of play and into coaches. And traditional sport is set up entirely differently. You coach starting with youth teams, and you build up your repertoire of how it is that you handle youth players and motivation and leadership at that level. Then you move up to maybe the high school or the university level, and you start really getting into the skill building and the strategy involved in sport. And eventually, through a lot of development and training and reading and meeting, mentoring from other coaches, you move up to the professional level. And at the professional level, you have support networks and national conferences that you go to every year and all that sort of stuff to help you. So none of this exists in League of Legends. And that's because there's a lack of developmental divisions below the pro league for these coaches to go and educate themselves. And then at the pro league, there's a complete lack of infrastructure globally for professional development, for coaches to go and exchange information about the game and how to coach. And one of the reasons that Korea is actually so far ahead of the West is because they simply transplanted their method of producing coaches into eSport. And in Korea and Japan, they have a very career-oriented athletic focus and a very mentor-mentee relationship in athletics. So if you're a baseball player, you go from senpai player to kohai. So you go from from kohai to senpai. So you go from lower player to upper player, and then at that point you're coaching players. And you go from there to a mentor of players, but then you're a mentee of a higher coach. And you move from that relationship to an assistant coach and then up to a coach. So they just transplanted this idea into League. And what you have are the development of leadership and coaching skills as people progress through this career path. And so the coaching quality is better simply because they have this built-in step-by-step process forward through the skill building. And I also wanted to touch on the idea of that Nick brought up in his video about in traditional sport versus in League of Legends, what it means to be like a challenger player versus not a challenger player. So in traditional sport, you can have coaches that produce Olympians with only being moderately successful at the sport themselves. But it's like what Nick said. They have a understanding of the fundamental genesis of success in that sport, whether it's through a motor skill or strategy or whatever. So, for example, when I coached swimming, I never competed at the national level when I was in the university. But I had to compete with a lot of really stupid philosophy as a swim coach. People focused on what looks pretty above the water, this kind of smooth swimming philosophy, gliding the hand in and stuff like that. And it's readily apparent to anybody who's swum for 19 years that for speed, 19 years competitively, that none of that matters. Everything that happens under the water is the essential part of speed in the pool. And the fastest stroke looks ugly as heck compared to the swimming immersion kind of be one with the water type stuff. And that is why all of my swimmers, when I started coaching, started setting personal records. They started placing nationally, and they competed eventually in the Paralympics, because I had that concept of the fundamental genesis of where swimming power comes from and how to develop that neuromotor connection to produce power for that speed. So the big question is, what do you do as a team owner when you're looking at these facts and trying to decide, well, what am I going to do for coaching? My first recommendation is to remember that League of Legends is both a mental sport and a team sport. So yes, the knowledge of how this genesis of perfect movement or perfect strategy is not there yet, except in very select people who kind of are starting to grasp at it. But you can hire a coach that coaches teams of people and produce amazing results. So if you're looking for people who understand human learning, who understand the psychology of learning, who have a coaching philosophy, who know how to coach leadership in young people, how to produce social and emotional learning or social and emotional skills. By the way, Loco Doco is great at this. Like, his players hardly ever choke. And he could have like horrible strategy and still probably be one of the best teams in NA because of his ability to develop players, cohesively and to put them around a mission. Skara is also good at this because he cares about his players. That's a really important fundamental attribute for developing social and emotional skills in your athletes. And then, of course, motivation. So teams like Gravity and Dignitas, like if they can't find a coach, my recommendation is that you make one. There's a reason that, first of all, people use coaches. Esports is not like a special ballerina where it's going to be this mystical, amazing sport where there are no coaches. Eventually, every team will have a coach because they'll be winning more. Coach quality will increase. Division depth will grow. People will start coaching youth leagues and working their way up. And the professional development of coaches will start to begin. Like I mentioned on First Blood, I myself have plans with whatever I can do as far as investment to get the first annual coaching conference going, and we'll see things like that in independent organizations starting to do this kind of stuff eventually. So if you're a team captain or a team owner, find somebody who legitimately understands coaching a team. And I mean, you could, depending on how much money you want to spend, you could find somebody with a decade or more of experience in a professional team environment as a coach. I was really happy when I saw Fanatics advertisement for a coach a couple months ago in December, because they actually listed all of the attributes for a pro coach. Of course, they weren't, I don't think, necessarily willing to pay for that kind of experience, but it's a really good first step to conceptualize what it is that you want and realize that like that's not out there and you're going to have to settle at this point. So one of the things you can do is find one of those people, and then you can kind of empower them with the players can be empowered to be the strategists in the game. So you have the coach who is kind of like John Wooden, who is just really good with the players, and then the players are free then to like express themselves and figure out how it is that they can win. Or you can find somebody who has incredible insight into the genesis of the game, like Nick claims to have. And then you can hire a sports psychologist to teach them the other stuff, or you can hire a life skills coach to handle that part of the team and to teach your exceptionally insightful player like how to communicate with players and motivate them and things like that. So then that's what I recommend for teams. But what if you're a coach and you're just really dismayed by this video because you think, okay, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to develop myself if I can't legitimately market myself to a pro team because I don't feel qualified? Then what's my next step? What do I do with the challenge that Nick has set out in this field? And first off, understand that coaching is a skill. It's not a talent that you're born with. And so the first step is to copy people who are good at it. So if you're not confident that you are the greatest and you don't have your own philosophy, then you probably don't, and you probably aren't. So simply watch people who are better than you. Watch Loco Doco. See how and what he does to coach. Devour any content he produces and learn from him and other people like him. And the second step is to study. Read books on coaching. A good place to start is Leading with the Heart by Mark Krzyzewski, who's by the way, that's spelled Czzyzewski, even though it's pronounced totally differently. The basketball coach at Duke talks a lot about how to lead people and teams. So he's not really talking about basketball there. You could read The Mental Game of Tennis if you wanted to get into the kind of the mental aspect of how to help your players. You can learn about teams. You can learn about learning. You could read The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzki, which is kind of a really good story introduction into the art of reprogramming your neurons so that your motor movement is exactly what you want at the elite level. And if you really want to get into learning and you want to read something more philosophical, you can turn to Bandura's theory of social learning, which explains how it is that the mind learns new things. And this will really help you to understand what Nick was referring to when he said most analysts just tell you what they saw instead of being useful. And that's not that's actually what a lot of coaches do. They look at a player and they say, well, this is what I saw. And that's not actually the best thing for learning, because it doesn't have, just telling people what they did is not useful at all for actual learning. And that's something that I in fact did a session on today with one of the teams that I'm working with, on how do you give feedback after a scrim to produce learning in the players versus just giving them a bunch of information that then they go into the next game and nothing changes. So eventually, if you do all of this study and this learning, eventually League of Legends is going to get a sandbox mode. And people like Loco Doco and maybe Nick will be making these insane drills to train League of Legends squads. And teams with these technical focused coaches are going to be amazing because they will finally have complete power to drill the fundamentals. And the technical know-how of their coaches is going to just come out in all of these really incredible drills that they're able to pull off in the sandbox mode. And the players are going to improve by leaps and bounds. But along with that movement, these drills will be formalized. So they're just like in all sports, some books will come out and you'll be able to use drills from the great innovators. And eventually there'll be standard sets of drills, just like in football when you go. And if I was to go to a football practice here in Finland, it'd probably be really similar to the soccer practice in the US, the kinds of things we do for warm-up and passing drills and whatnot. So your main strength as a coach will then revert to the ability to motivate, to cultivate, to inspire, and to manage your athletes, and to help them through the learning process with these drills, and to help them through the team cohesion process. So now I'm going to give you a shameless plug, because if you want to learn more about this, you can visit mindgames.gg/coach. I'm actually starting a free training program on March 2nd. So if you see this after March 2nd, you can visit anyway because it's ongoing. But one of my missions at Mind Games, aside from my side work as an eSport psych trainer, my main mission is to try to help aspiring pros, whether it be athletes or coaches, so that we can really boost the scene up and get it running, at the level that it needs to be. So check that out. Free training at mindgames.gg/coach. Claim your spot now, and look for that email on the 2nd of March when it comes. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share, was a little message of hope after Nick's really amazing and insightful, but also kind of dismaying video about the state of coaching. So if you are a coach, don't give up. Don't feel like you are lacking some sort of amazing technical knowledge. That's totally okay, because you can train that and you'll get there. And League of Legends is going to evolve. And everybody in the scene, I think, is still pretty young. So if you're listening to this and you're like, sub 25, like you're going to have opportunities for a very good career in eSport if you focus on educating yourself as a coach. Remember also that coaching is actually a degree. Like here in the University of Jyväskylä in Finland, you can study coaching for 6 years, get your master's degree in it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a specific sport. So you can even decide like, well, the scene's not kind of developed yet and I can't make a living from that yet, and I don't want to claim that I know all this stuff I don't, so let me go and start studying formally if you don't feel good about just like going and reading a bunch of books and trying stuff out. But the other thing you can do is start volunteering. My brother coaches youth soccer teams. Pick whatever sport it is that you played, when you were younger or whatever, and just go find youth teams around the area and volunteer, and you'll start to get the same exact kind of experience you need to coach League of Legends teams. Dealing with 7-year-olds on the soccer pitch and dealing with 19-year-olds in the gaming house is pretty much the same thing. Sorry, guys. That was a little shot at my team. But I don't mean it. So anyway, if you want to talk to me about any of this stuff, you can hit me up on Twitter at MyGamesWeldon, or just visit my website and send me contact.